a huge shift that way. So what we've been doing is granting this software to a lot of universities, community colleges, and even some high schools. Although, unfortunately, for high schools, a lot of the high schools in this country, I think it's symptomatic of where our K through 12 education is, aren't able to accept the software because they don't have the teachers or the environment to be able to use the software, even if it's donated to them. So, which is very different than what we're finding, for example, a lot of Asian countries and a lot of European countries, including Germany. So that's a problem because in a lot of other countries, we're starting much younger in terms of getting people excited about manufacturing, but also training them on some of the basics of manufacturing in areas like software development, coding, and other things. I think I read recently where only 12% of the high schools in this country teach some type of computer science and computer coding. And basically the whole world, every product we make across all of our different businesses is now run by software. Every single product. Every product has sensors in it. Every product is receiving data and sending data. And only 12% of our high schools are teaching computer science, coding, software development, et cetera. So I think we have a big shortfall in the K through 12, which we're doing some things through our Siemens Foundation. At the college level, we've been granting for several years now our software. We're hoping to work more with some high schools to get it started earlier. As many of you know, we rank 29th out of 29 countries in the OECD in teaching work-based skills in high school. 29th out of 29. We are last in terms of developing work-based skills in high schools. So that's a big challenge for us. And then, of course, we're working with the Business Roundtable on working on the credentialing problem, which we think is important because as we develop these skills in these programs, you want people to be able to move from one part of the country to the other and be able to transfer the skills. So we're putting a lot of folks, so we're starting to move from individual plant programs, apprenticeship programs, to more top-down, granting software and developing training for software, but also working on things like national credentialing. So, yeah.
Eric, this is maybe something for you to think about when we open the floor, but for all of our panelists to think about, I think you have immediately identified a very appropriate and important policy role, which is part of this panel's responsibility, where the government can make some really sustainable long-term movement and policies that will help assure that we can get to the demand-driven or business-driven educated and skilled workforce, and that relates to equipping particularly our K-12 systems across the country with the ability to be technology infused and to teach to technology infusion, because that is putting us, that inability in many school systems is putting us further and further behind. And then secondly, a challenge that relates to our businesses, which the network has begun to discuss, is many of our, particularly small manufacturers, really don't have the capacity to run a full-fledged work and learn program or work-based learning or apprenticeship program within their company. Right. In Germany and Switzerland, I know there's a lot of shared responsibility across multiple companies who can kind of set competition aside in order to get the pipeline ready. But I also have to believe that there's a technology solution for work-based learning for small companies and the individuals they hire. So maybe we can come back to those two issues, the policy and the work and learn or work-based learning model using technology, and whether or not that's something you've given more thought to. Sure. So, Peter, I think we had you next, and that would break our seating order, which is always more exciting than going straight down the line. So can I turn it over to you?
Sure.
Great.
Nice segue into small companies.
Thank you.
So I feel a little bit out of place here with Rockwell, Siemens, Volkswagen. We're a company of 100 people in Maysville, Kentucky, but we face exactly the same issues that the larger companies have also. And you know, I think we've put our minds to, as a small company, making an apprenticeship program work even without the resources. And I'd just like to talk about the details of that a little bit. So we're in Maysville, Kentucky. We're an hour from any major labor market. So our community has 8,000 people in town and 16,000 in the county. So you can imagine that there's not a whole lot that we can bring in finished people off the street. We have to educate them. And there is a shortage of labor in Maysville, Kentucky, no question about it. So we, and the other thing is we can't afford to buy skills from other companies because that turns into a price war. And we all know what price wars lead to. They lead to rising costs and no rise in productivity. So our job basically as an employer is to create a culture where people thrive, where they want to join the culture, and also where they don't want to leave, where they want to stay. So that's job number one. And the second job is basically to develop people once we have them in our facility. And we have several programs along those lines. You know, the apprenticeship is just one aspect of people development. It's one tool, but certainly there's a whole lot more. So I'd like to just give you some details about our particular apprenticeship program. We started in 2005 with 3 apprentices, 1 in machining, 1 in electrical, 1 in maintenance, and those are sort of the traditional apprenticeship disciplines. Since then, we've had 22 apprentices in our program in 7 different disciplines, and that includes accounting, customer service, certainly electrical, metrology, machining, maintenance, manufacturing engineering, and marketing. But the most have been actually in the customer service or inside sales area. So we believe in apprenticing any person that we bring into the company if we can at all do it. The results have been tremendous. We approach it a little bit differently. We don't look at it as an investment over 3 or 4 years. It's more of an immediate return. Our apprentices become productive right away. And we've had 11 graduates, and 7 of them are in significant leadership roles in our company already. 9 of 11 have earned an associate's degree or higher. We have 2 with a bachelor's degree, and 1 is actually working on a master's degree. So we're bending the rules a little bit. And they're greatly outperforming. The people that have been through our apprenticeship program are greatly outperforming their peers. The structure, basically, we hire them first, and we hire them the same way we hire anybody. We look for the absolute best person we can bring into our company, because the goal is that we're going to have them for 20 or 30 years. So if we shortchange that process of hiring the best person, then we're not going to be very successful. We also have a wonderful community college in Maysville, and they support developing a curriculum for any of the disciplines. And even if we come to them with 1 person, they bend over backwards to create a curriculum for that 1 person. The most difficult one was the inside sales, because they really didn't have a lot of those courses in their portfolio, but they put something together that we could work with. Our apprentices spend 10 hours in the classroom and 30 hours at work. And again, they're very productive in those 30 hours. And we pay them for 40 hours, so we pay them for the time in the classroom. We also pay for their books and tuition and everything that they need. We begin them at a 75% wage of the entry-level position of whatever that job is, and increase that 10% per year over the 4 years, so that they're at 105% of the entry level when they graduate. And we found that starting the apprenticeship program, we were sort of intimidated by the thought of it, but the Kentucky Department of Labor was very supportive. The community college was supportive. And once we started, we found it to be very, very easy. And now it's sort of runs itself. We really don't spend a lot of time managing it. Our original goals were to hire high school graduates, 18-year-olds. That's, I think, everybody's intent here. And what we found was that we just didn't have the offering at that age level in our small community in the quantity that we needed in all the disciplines. So what we found was that the range of people coming into our program, the age range is 18 to 43, and the average age is 29. So we've had a handful of 18-year-olds come in, and they walk on water. They're doing terrific. But there just weren't enough of them, so we advertised our jobs just like anybody else, and we're getting a lot of people with work experience, with maturity, that may have a family, may not have a family, but they certainly take life seriously, and they're motivated to move ahead and take the apprenticeship very seriously. we would like to further develop our program. We don't have some of the internationally recognized certifications and standards. That's a goal that we have over time. We also would like more companies in our community to join us so that we have a critical mass to take advantage of the educational offering that we have, which is just tremendous. So we look at employee development as sort of, we're a small business, we're family owned. We look at it, our employees are family, so we look at it as like sending your kids to college. It's just something you want to do or have to do or develop them or get them on their career journey. So from our experience, a couple of comments I'd like to make. We're all talking about a vision of the German system, and that's a wonderful vision, and we should strive for that. What we found is that the reality in the US, at least in our community, is that we can't implement that vision in a short period of time. So what I look at the German system as a 100% solution. I don't know how many years old it is, 150 years. I mean, they've developed it over time. And what we find in Maysville, Kentucky is we have a 70% solution, but it works. And we're getting fantastic results, almost immediate return, and the ROI, you know, we talk about how do you calculate ROI for this. Well, the ROI is immediate, it's obvious, it's intuitive. We don't need to calculate it. Probably we should. But you know, there is an opportunity, and keeping that German vision in front of us, I think, is critical, because that's, let's call it nirvana. And to work with that German vision and work within the reality in this country is, I think, the right solution. I believe industry needs to lead, because we have the need, we have the demand, we have the labor shortage. If we don't lead and start and creating demand, then you know, things aren't going to move forward very quickly. Government's role, in my mind, is to be supportive as industry leads. So through incentives, subsidies, setting standards, getting people together, great. But personally, and maybe an unpopular opinion, but for government to create these programs and lead industry, I think is not the right way. Education also needs to follow, offer the facilities and the instructors at the direction of industry, because only industry knows what we truly need. I think there's a risk in what we're doing here, and that is that we're going to over-engineer the US brand of apprenticeships. Germans don't over-engineer anything, do we? And I think if we force the German vision on the US reality too quickly and too aggressively, that it will be just a too high a hurdle to overcome. We can't magically create hundreds of thousands of German clones in our high schools. It's not going to happen. We also can't create the hundreds of instructors in our community colleges overnight that are able to take those clones and teach them the German system. What we can do is start locally in many communities and get immediate results. We've done it. It's really a lot simpler than you might think. And start with a 70% US solution, and in parallel, have these discussions and keep the vision in mind and organize government, education, and industry to continually work towards that vision, and then continually improve. You know, we're certainly not where we want to be, but we're successful. We've had 11 graduates. We've got 8 more in the program out of 100 people. Our goal is to have always 10% of our population in an apprenticeship program and keep them learning with that tool. And I do think it's great for us to have island models that we're creating in Carolina, in Detroit, in Atlanta, wherever that is, based on the 100% vision, so we know what we're shooting for, but we can't achieve that broadly across every community in this country. And we need it in every community in this country. So start slow, locally, follow that vision, and continually improve. And I think it can be tremendously successful if we approach it that way.
I think that's tremendous advice and recognition of the highly devolved nature of both our education system and our workforce system, and I think the power of leadership of business. I would encourage you to consider two things, and again, we can talk more about these in open dialogue, but the reason that the National Network of Industry Associations believes so strongly in the importance of creating this national blueprint of knowledge, skills, abilities, experiences, and behaviors, it's hard to say all of that, and then open sourcing it, is so that our educational institutions, our community colleges, have the KSA standards against which to develop their curriculum, and it is not starting from scratch at every community college in the country, which is kind of what we're doing now in response to the TACT grants. Everybody's wildly creating curriculum, and oh, how much easier and faster and more efficient it would be if the blueprint were available now. Unfortunately, we're catching up. And secondly, I would love to talk with you about maybe using your apprenticeship program and your apprentices as an opportunity for them to take, absent cost, an assessment for the NIMS credentials, just to see whether or not that credentialing program built in would increase their value, their marketability, of course you don't want to increase their marketability, you want to keep them all. I'm on the worker side of the equation now. And, but I think there is probably a huge potential that what you're teaching is in fact to industry standards, or they wouldn't be as successful as you've articulated.
And we would love to have our program recognized statewide, countrywide, internationally, and that's certainly a goal. We know we're not there yet, but that's certainly a goal.
For us to see replication
Absolutely.
in a small company, you could be our standard bearer, so we'll be in touch. Ilker, if I may ask you to take the floor.
Thanks. Well, at Volkswagen, we're not talking about skills gap. That's interesting, right?
I love it.
But we're talking about training gap. That's different.
It's
it's a different way of how to look at things. So
Yes, it is.
basically, it's tied to skills gap as well. And I will tell you why we say it's a training gap, because Volkswagen as a group, we have 12 brands in the group. It's Porsche, Audi, Skoda, Seat, Bentley, Bugatti, Lamborghini. All those brands, Ducati, for example, all those brands belongs to Volkswagen. So, and we're acting globally. So we have over 100 plants worldwide. And we do have over 550,000 employees worldwide. So the challenge of training people and having the right people on the right position with the right skills, with the right competency, it's not just in the States. So it's globally. So how did Volkswagen work that out, and how can we build 9.1 million cars? Last year we sold 9.1 million cars in the world, and we're still successful. So, of course, the US market is for us a key market to be successful till 2018, because we have our strategies, and one of our key action area to be successful until 2018 is expertise. And expertise is tied to apprentices. So if you look in all of those brands, if you look in the key measure, how they qualify the people, the future skilled team members, how we call them, they are all tied in apprentice programs. So basically, my previous life, or my pathway to in my career was, I started as an apprentice in Germany 15 years ago at Volkswagen. So I was filing on the bench, I was doing my project, and I could never ever imagine I'm back in 15 years in the States, in Washington, D.C., and holding a speech and a panel discussion over the educational system. So, but the education system in Germany and Volkswagen as a company gave me the opportunity to grow with my skills. Of course, there's two partners for that. I have to show efforts, I have to be willing to learn, I have to give 100% and sometimes more to be successful. So on one side is the product itself. We build those awesome cars, high quality, but also the training concept is also our product. Education and apprenticeship programs and also professional education is also a Volkswagen product what we want to promote. And especially the skills initiative from the German ambassador here in Washington, D.C., we're promoting that because that's where we see the success in it. And like I say, the market is very important for us. And what we did in Chattanooga, Tennessee, we're building the U.S. Passat for the market, for the U.S. market. And what we did, even before we started with production, we built our Volkswagen Academy, which is our training facility. It's a state-of-the-art facility and it's benchmarked even in the group of Volkswagen. So we started with a apprenticeship program called Mechatronics program. It's based on German curriculum, 3 years program in 2 paths. One is more maintenance, running the robots and fixing them. And then also we do have the car mechatronics, which is basically just specific work on the car. So two occupations we targeted in 2010, actually, before we start production. And right now, we have 61 students in the program, and we're still in a ramp-up phase. We're hiring every year 24 students, and we will have 24 graduates every year. So last year, we had 13 graduates, first US students, actually, in the States. They received the German recognition of that we have the same competencies, the same qualification delivered to our US students, and it's certified by the German-American Chamber of Commerce and also by the DIHK in Berlin, which basically says the US students are equal with the competencies and qualification as the German student. So qualification is one thing, qualification is more taking the class, but the more important thing is to apply that knowledge in the real world, the competency, right?
Right.
So I always say you can have the same machine, you can have the same robot, like my colleagues in, for example, at Siemens. We have the same machine sometimes, but the key is to have the right people with the right qualification, right competency, right place, right? To make sure that we can operate those machines. And so the program is recognized by the state and by German government. So basically last year, 2 of our graduates, we sent them for further education to Germany, to Wolfsburg for 1 year, to get their professional development in Germany for 1 year. So what they did basically is they took the US passport, they took the German certification, and they were ready to work. There was no more paperwork. Just out of the plane, going to the plant, and just work. So we will pull them back to, of course, we're creating jobs in the States. So if my colleagues say, well, right now you have graduates, and why you send them out of the States? Well, we just train them still. So that's a big difference. Some US companies, they're looking for a short term of return of invest. We're investing in the long term. So we could easily call an agency outside, a recruiting agency, and say, well, give me 2 welders. And right now, it may work right now, but in the future, it won't work because the market is, we can't find those people, right? So we have to train our own pool of experts. We have to train our own pool of specialists to make sure that we have in the long term our right people in the right place. And so we will pull those US students back to the States. Of course, we have a plan for them, how we want to move forward with them. And that's one of the best practice how it could work, especially with a cooperation with a community college. We cooperate with Chattanooga State Community College. So my task was actually for my CEO, he said, come over from Germany, bring the system with you, but make it better in the States. And that's what we did. So we did it better. And it works because 60% of our employees worldwide will, 60% of our employees will work outside of Germany in 2018. So we have to make sure that we have the right measures in the right place to move forward and to be successful. And we can see that recognition through the state, through the American students, and also through our German colleagues, that it works. It's a great HR tool, how we can be flexible. If, for example, an HR manager knows that there are students in the state with the same competency, that we can move them flexibility back and forth to make sure that we have the right skills in the right place. So if you want to see a real dual vocational training, how it works in the States, you have to come to Chattanooga, Tennessee, to Volkswagen, and to see, you can see how it works.
And I highly recommend that visit because it is really extraordinary. You know, for those of us, Ilker, who have long lusted after a renaissance in career and technical education in this country, quite frankly, particularly in the secondary schools leading to our community colleges. I think this phenomenon, and we've had offers now from the Swiss, and I'm listening to your model with Germany, of our skilled crafts and tradesmen, our middle skilled jobs in their educational pathways, having the opportunity to do the foreign exchange kind of experience, to see the global marketplace, the global companies, to be, quite frankly, treated the way we in the US treat only our high-end college-bound university students. to transport that thinking to the global education of a global manufacturing workforce, to me, is kind of a lifelong dream. So I'm glad you're starting it. We want to ride that and see if we can't make that more
Let me add
a
one more
typical
thing.
experience.
When I started, like I say, as an apprentice, I was 16. And during my high school, it was, I had 3 internships during my high school. So I knew what I wanted to do after my internships, and I knew what I didn't want to do. So
very important.
And that's one of those key messages I want to just share with you is US students, they need to get the chance to know what's out there on the market. They need to know that. Most of US high school graduates, they go to colleges or they just directly go to work. And there is a gap in between that. I had different choices during my path, during my educational way, so the system was set up differently. So, of course, I mean, we have to face it as well. We cannot just copy-paste it. We know that. No. We cannot just copy-paste a system and just say, well, now let's look how it works. But I would love to spend a internship time, for example, with a school teacher, with a dean, for example, 1 or 2 weeks in manufacturing to show them what's going on. So we don't need big money for that. Of course, I mean, the federal government, they will support the initiatives, but let's come to the ground and say, what can we really do? How can we move forward to make sure that what Eric mentioned is that teachers, parents, and children understand the new manufacturing. It's all innovative, it's all new, it's high quality, so it's safe, it's not hot, it's not unsafe, so it's everything, it's well done. So we have to really move forward and bring the change in the mindset of teachers, of parents, of deans, and like I say, it should be also for US students kind of a must-have an internship during high school, for example. Just to go out and see and spend 1 or 2 weeks as an intern and just see what's out there, what can you do? Because most of our applicants, they're mostly between 20, like what you said, Peter, between 20 and 30, and they don't know what to do.
Right.
They just jumped here and there, and they don't know what to do. And it's just wasting of time and wasting, of course, of skills. Because at the end of the day, we're creating jobs. It's about jobs, and it's about to giving individuals a chance to grow with that manufacturing, to grow within the field. And you can make your way in that, and you will get good paid for that.
Well, I tell you, you've taken your charge seriously. You're doing it better here. We're going to keep him. Thank you so much. Those are fabulous comments. Let's move to Arjonetta, and thank you for joining us, and we're eager to hear your remarks.
Excuse me. Thank you for the invitation. I want to tell you a little bit about our company, the mechanics of our apprenticeship program, and how we're recruiting, and what our results have been so far. So the MTU Aiken plant is the centerpiece of MTU America's manufacturing operations, producing world-class diesel engines for a multitude of off-highway markets, including construction, industrial, power generation, oil and gas, marine, and mining and defense. MTU America moved its manufacturing operations from Detroit, Michigan to Aiken County, South Carolina in 2010. So although we had a ready workforce to get the plant up and running, it became apparent that future expansion plans would depend on a continuous pool of qualified potential employees, which didn't seem to be readily available in the area. We assemble diesel engines, and so most of the people we originally hired were diesel mechanics, and that soon dried up. We originally had 600 applicants for 60 positions. We interviewed about 200 people in a 2-week time span, and once we were ready to expand beyond that, then we couldn't find the diesel engine mechanics, that had dried up. So we decided to invest in Aiken County's education system by partnering with the Aiken County Schools, the Aiken County Career and Technology Center, and Aiken Technological College to bring a new approach to vocational training, an approach that has been successfully used at MTU America's parent company in Germany for over 30 years. So MTU is headquartered in Friedrichshafen, Germany. So our VP, Jörg Cleese, was supposed to be here, and I'm his substitute, and hope I do a good job for him. He looked at the U.S. educational system and talked about a lost link in education. So for those who are not interested in going to college for whatever reason, once they graduate, what skills do they really have to go out into the workforce? Most of them end up in restaurant jobs, McDonald's, not knocking McDonald's, I love McDonald's, but when you talk about the skills that they're ready to come out, and what can we do with those students? Not much. And so MTU America's unique apprenticeship program gives high school students a structured and coordinated training system that provides an avenue for students to obtain work skills immediately sought by employers, an opportunity for students to earn a wage while they learn, and a career path with opportunity for growth and greater income. So the process of engaging and recruiting apprentices starts early. As high school freshmen, they're introduced to our plant via an educational brochure and potential tours and presentations. So the goal is to motivate students to stay in school by previewing their apprenticeship program. So rather than have them drop out and say, well, I'm just not going to go to school anymore, here's another option for you. And so that's why we talk to them at a 9th grade level. In the 10th grade, the student selection process begins with teacher nominations from the Aiken County Career and Technology Center. So what we have in Aiken County is we have 6 high schools that feed into the Aiken County Career and Technology Center. So the vocational training happens at this center. And so the students that we recruit come from that center. So they're from the different high schools, but they all have to start at that center. During the 9th and 10th grade year, they actually have exploratory programs. And for those who are looking in the area of mechatronics and who are studying CNC training, those are the ones that we actually recruit from. So we get the teacher nominations, and then we conduct training sessions and informational sessions at the school, as well as we invite the students that are interested and their parents to our plant for a tour. We do math assessments as well as we do interviews. So final selections are made, and then the students enroll in our program during that spring semester of their sophomore year. As high school juniors is when they officially come to our plant. So they attend their high school classes, history and math and that, which is important. They go to the Career Center for their vocational training, their technical training, and then they work at our plant on a part-time basis during the school year as an elective. And they work full-time for us in the plant during their summers. And we work a compressed work schedule Monday through Thursday, 6 a.m. to 4:30 p.m., which can be challenging for a 16-year-old. I'd rather be out fishing or hanging out during my summer. But anyway, so they do that during their high school year, and then during their 12th grade year, they do the same thing, but they spend a little more time at our plant. And so they rotate through various departments at our company, basically through our engine assembly departments and then our machining departments, learning how to assemble an engine, as well as in our CNC shop making parts for us. We have a 2-part final exam. We started out with a 3-part exam process. We basically took the German model of the 3-year program and turned it into a 2-year program for us, because that's how much time we had between their school system and what we wanted to have them in the plant actually learning. So we have a 2-part exam. It's a written exam as well as a practical exam. We just started this program in 2012, just weeks. We just finished our program, and so we have 2 new graduates, which we're really proud of. And during that exam process, our committee, we had the German American Chamber of Commerce representative, we had Apprenticeship South Carolina on our committee, as well as a teacher and an operations leader from our plant. And so they were the ones that actually judged the final results. So upon completion, the students will receive a certification. It's a skill mechanic certification. It's recognized and protected by the state of South Carolina and the U.S. Department of Labor. So with this certification, the graduates will be able to obtain open positions at our company, MTU America, or many other potential employers. One of the things that we're trying to do now is to get other employers in their area interested in this program. So while we're trying to recruit 6 every year, we may not be able to hire 6 every year. So if we can get Kimberly-Clark, that produce baby diapers in our area, as well as Bridgestone, the tire manufacturer, if we can get them involved as the other 2 largest employers in the area, then when our graduates graduate from the program with these general manufacturing skills that they can take anywhere with them, we're hoping that even if they don't start their own apprenticeship program, they will recruit ours that we can't hire. In addition, we have been successful in obtaining recognition by the IHK and the AHK in Germany, which would enable graduates to start their careers abroad in a foreign country. We also, this year, were able to have 6 German apprentices come over and work with our South Carolina apprentices. And so that was great. Once they got beyond the language barrier, it was great for them to learn just culturally and all the technical skills that they actually learned from those apprentices. Most of the people in Aiken, South Carolina like Aiken, South Carolina and are not really that mobile, but we wanted to get that certification so if at any time in the future they were interested in moving on, that they could do that at an international location. So our apprenticeship program has received significant attention since since its launch in the fall of 2012. We've been featured in mainstream media such as Dan Rather Reports, the Wall Street Journal, and the New York Times. So our MTU representatives have also been invited to meet with the U.S. Secretary of Education in Washington, D.C., which we did a couple years ago, to discuss this program, and because it's the first of its kind focusing on high school students in our state. So the state of South Carolina has recognized our program as well with a Private Sector Champion of the Year as part of its 2013 Carolina Careers Governors Awards, and then the Association of Career and Technical Education presented MTU America with this Award of Merit, which is awarded annually to business leaders who support technical programs nationwide. To talk about some of the comments that have already been made, we don't have a training facility at our place, and so that's why we partner with the school system. We have provided them with equipment, tools, as well as workbenches, probably made an investment of just about $10,000. Our vice president has met with Governor Haley and to talk about changing the education curriculum so that as they partner with business, what they offer in the state is actually something that we can use when it comes to the education system, giving us exactly what the manufacturers need. As you said, government-led is probably not the answer, but industry-led, because we know what we want and we know what we need from the workers. Our sister company in Mankato, Minnesota is now looking at our model, and they assemble generator sets, and they are getting ready to start their own apprenticeship program because ours has been successful. Some of the companies in the area, we're trying to get them involved. They just look at high school students as, why would we want to do that? 16-year-olds, immature and that, but for our work system, the only thing that they can't do when it comes to the state regulations is operate cranes and hoists. Other than that, they can work on our assembly line. We have them in red T-shirts so that they stand out. They are partnered with mentors and train them. They don't operate the hoist, and we try to make sure that, of course, what they're doing is safe for them in their operation. To be totally transparent, though, when it comes to the immaturity, we did have some of that. So during our first year, when it came to that first summer working that 6 to 4:30 schedule, I had one student come up and say, that's just really early in the morning. Can I come in a little later? No, this is the schedule. And unfortunately for two of them, one was driving to work, and then the other one was being dropped off by his parent. And the second one would get in the car with the other one, and then they drive off. And so their parents thought they were actually there at work with us, and we called the parents to say, well, if so-and-so hasn't showed up in a couple of days, can you tell us why? Well, I dropped him off. And unfortunately, those two dropped out of our program during that summer. And so it is definitely a two-part, as you already mentioned, it's two parts. We can have the best program and really have the greatest intentions, but if the students aren't in it, we can't go and get them out of bed and have them come to work. So that's been one of the struggles. And so one thing that we did do, while we interview them and think we have the best candidates, we had a special meeting last week. Because last week was the first week of the full-time summer. So we had a meeting with the parents the week before, the parents and the students, to drill in them how important it was, what a great opportunity this is, but it's the parents' responsibility to make sure that they got the students to us, because if they're home in the bed, they're not helping us, they're not helping themselves either. And so we have one student I was mentioning last night at the reception who is he wants to play football and hasn't really made up his mind which is more important to him. So he just no call, no show for work last Thursday. And he was at football practice. So the next day he was at football practice with no qualms. So it was a football practice. So for him, he's going to have to make a choice. And he's not going to be the next Heisman Trophy winner. So he really should stay with us and be trained. But maybe a little hard to convince him of that. But that's one of the immaturity is one of the things that we're battling with as far as getting them to realize what an important opportunity this is.
I think you are like the best HR director I've ever heard. The little parent thrown in. I will reference those employability skills. You might want to take a look at the personal skills, critical to the hiring practices, no doubt about that. That's an extraordinary story. I'm having images of the culture shock of the German students in a rural South Carolina town. Like to have been there for that, but congratulations, what a wonderful effort is underway. I have two quick questions that I want to frame for the whole panel. I'm going to start with you and come down this way on the first, and then I'll go backwards on the second question, and then we're going to open it to the floor. So have your questions ready. But these are two that really get to kind of the public policy aspect of what we might be looking to change to accelerate and promote the kind of efforts you have underway. I was just north of your border. I was in North Carolina, and they were looking longingly down at that high school apprenticeship program. So now I have some good information to take back to them. But one of the statements that was made in the room of reformers was actually this. So how did the South Carolina Chamber, which is kind of the centerpiece of the South Carolina apprenticeship movement, get so many businesses engaged and so much activity underway so quickly? And someone else in the room said, well, there's a $1,000 tax credit for every student in an apprenticeship program. And the immediate response was, yeah, but the companies have said that really doesn't matter. Most of them aren't going after the tax credit. So coming from South Carolina, can you respond to that? And then just coming up the row here, do you see tax policy, tax credit policy related to skills training in some way that perhaps we haven't considered yet?
I can say specifically with our vice president being from Germany, seeing the success of our program for 30 years, when he came, it wasn't about the tax credit. That's just icing on the cake, because what we need with or without a tax credit is we need trained workers. So it's great that we have that tax credit, and again, for us, we may or may not be able to hire each one of them depending upon our business needs at the time and our volumes. So right now, for example, our volumes are down, and so we're going to be able to absorb these two, but our goal is to hire 6 every year, and we may or may not. So that tax credit may or may not come, because if we don't hire them, we don't get them. And that's hire them as full-time apprentices, not just during the training program. It's once they finish the program, getting that credit after they're actually hired. So for us, it's not about the credit. Again, it's great, but for us, it's actually getting the trained worker on our floor to be able to help our business.
Yeah.
I would agree that the tax credits are secondary. However, the state of Kentucky is very supportive, and even before we started our apprenticeship program, we were getting pretty much 50% of our training investments returned to us in the form of grants and tax credits. And that's extended into our apprenticeship program also. So does it help? You better believe it, but it is absolutely secondary. We need the workers.
Right.
Okay.
I mean, for us, we have a commitment. Even if we have the tax, advantage or not, we will just do it. It doesn't matter for us, because it's in our culture. It's in our German culture to do it. So it's over 200 years, what you mentioned. So it's a good gift to take it, but it would be more better to give those credits to the students, for the applicants, to say, if you go through that program, or if you decided, please use that as a scholarship, whatever it is. However, we do even pay our students during the program. They get paid when they are in the program. We pay also college fees as well. But it's all based on attendance, what you mentioned, attendance and successful completion of the program, because we guarantee them a job after 3 years. So basically, yes, it's good to have the tax policies. However, it will be more beneficial for those applicants to motivate them more to apply for manufacturing jobs.
Excellent.
I would say, I think similar to what they're saying, maybe add a couple of things. One is in North Carolina, for example, where we did the apprentice program, there was no direct tax benefit to us. I think there was some state money to help train the professors and things, but no direct money to Siemens. The money would be pretty small anyway. Over the 3 years, our mechatronics program, which is similar length to your program, I think costs us over $150,000 a student. Now, the bulk of that is the salary, the compensation they get over the 3.5 years, but about a quarter of it is actually for the education, the training. That doesn't count the one-time amount of money, which you mentioned. We actually put tools into the school and things like that. So there's a one-time cost to put some of the technology out into the community college or technical school or whatever, which we do in lots of locations around the country. So when you're talking $150,000, $1,000 tax credit isn't. I mean, obviously, anything would be beneficial. What I've been saying at the White House, I'm part of the Advanced Manufacturing Program, the President's Council on Advanced Manufacturing, is in Germany, in the apprentice program, the combination of the federal government and the individual state pays, I think, about 40% of the apprentice program. and basically to cover the actual training and the tools and things like that. So what I was saying is, they have the Workforce Investment Act, which I think has just been rewritten, and I think Secretary Pritzker was involved in that, but called the Workforce Investment and Opportunity Act now, and they've eliminated a bunch of the programs, and they've repositioned some of that. I've been saying, let's take some of that money down to where we're actually training people, and I said, I think Vice President Biden looked at those programs on the Workforce Investment Act, and basically most of them had no metrics. There was no way to tell whether these programs were working or not. And I said, these apprentice programs are great because they have the ultimate metric, which is they're getting jobs. As everyone's saying here, you know, we're paying you as you start, whether you're in school, high school, or coming out of high school, or you're already out in the workforce, as you were saying, we're already paying people, so they have a job. So if you're looking for a metric of, are we getting people jobs with this money? Yes. So I think more of this money should be focused on these kind of programs, because there's a good chance they're not only going to be their short-term jobs, but there's a good chance they're going to lead to a long-term job and start someone's career off on the right path, as opposed to the fact that we have, what, 40% of the young people in this country, 16 to 26, who are unemployed or underemployed or whatever, right? So I think we ought to start focusing more of the dollars on those kind of programs. Those dollars, I think, will be more impactful than just tax benefits. So.
Right.
Yeah.
I'll have to give my successor Jay an equal time on this probably, but I fear that the changes in the Reauthorized Workforce Investment Act will not bring more dollars to this kind of training. It didn't seem to be, to me, to be designed for that, which actually...
That's why I keep pushing.
Yeah, good for you. Keep pushing. It'll be 10 years before they take it up again, but we can push together.
Yeah.
So my, it's not my final question, but I'll stop after this one. It really relates to what you all have said. But because our education system is generally a devolved public system, and our federal government arguably invests billions of dollars in workforce development every year, I'm wondering if you believe policymakers, particularly in Congress, understand the important role they play in redirecting programs and initiatives and investments to the kind of training that actually works to create jobs and attract more companies with jobs into the states. And if there was a kind of single policy push that we could put on our federal government and or the governors, do you have something in mind that would be most helpful to you? And that's a big loaded question, Eric, so I'm going to start with you because you're in this federal mix a lot.
I would say a couple things. One is, you asked, are they starting to understand the need? And so we've had, and I'm sure these other companies as well, and I know Volkswagen probably gets a lot of visitors, but we've had a tremendous number of people coming down to Charlotte. We just, a week or two ago, we had several congressmen. We've had huge groups of staffers coming through, both spending a day at the plant and a day at the community college and the training, talking to the students to get understanding. So I think there's a growing awareness that these kinds of programs can be valuable. Governors, I have to admit, get it much faster. When we talk about these kind of programs, when we just started the one in Atlanta, Governor Deal was all over it. When we go and talk, obviously Governor McCrory has been a big supporter. He has come out to the community colleges, come to the plant. When you take a look at other states where we've been doing this out with our wind plant in Iowa and Kansas and our train plant out in Sacramento, the governors get it, the local congressmen get it. They understand it. I think the ability to get funds for a lot of these things has been difficult. There aren't a lot of funds. But I think, as I think everyone's here is saying, this needs to be business-led. Businesses understand the advantage of the long-term investment. That in the short term, you could go out and use search companies and other people to find some of these positions. But what's happening more and more is it's difficult to find not only the number of people you need, but the quality of people you need. And I think the big advantage of these programs is it really embeds them in the company. It gets them to understand the culture. And I think one of the most powerful things we heard from two of the panelists here is starting this in high school. And as I said before, we're way behind the rest of the world, way behind the rest of the world. The number of high school students in this country who have a real internship in developing a real skill has got to be less than 1%. And you know, what your story, starting at 16, 3 years of a real internship, and by the time you got to high school, you kind of knew where you wanted to go with this career, and starting students. And you know, some of them are immature and they don't understand. I think I may have had that problem myself, but I think it's a powerful thing that I think people in government need to understand. And parents need to understand. I think some of the most interesting conversations I've had is with parents about the value of this as a, and the way we position it too, and I heard the same thing from the others, this is the beginning of your career. This is not, your career has to be spent in a plant. This is the floor, not the ceiling. Many of the senior executives at Siemens, and I'm sure at Volkswagen, started out as apprentices, like yourself. My CFO for the Americas started out as an apprentice, right? They see it in Germany as this is a way to develop a real skill, to get a job and to get paid, and to launch your career. There's a university track in Germany as well, but that doesn't mean in Germany one isn't seen as better than the other, right? In the US, we've been pushing everyone down this university track, and 40% of them don't graduate, and the ones who do can't find gainful employment. Meanwhile, we don't have enough people going down this technical track, and I think that's what we really need to get the federal government, but more importantly, I think the states are starting to get it. They see these jobs showing up in South Carolina and North Carolina and Tennessee and in Kentucky and other places, and they see the programs that companies are putting together, and I think they're starting to understand. What we need more of a top-down push, I think, as the ambassador said today, to get this thing, jumpstart this thing in a bigger way. So
I think that's great. And again, the Business Network, top priority, work and learn models beginning in high school, period. Not waiting for the last year in university. So absolutely, that's wonderful. Thanks, Eric. Ilker?
So we have to look to the facts. So if you look to the youth unemployment rate in Germany between 14 and 25 years, we are around 7.7, 7.8% of youth unemployment. And if you look in the States, it's more than 15%. So 55 or 60% of German high school grades, they go directly to a dual vocational training, to an apprenticeship program. And then later, of course, they make their own way through a university, whatever. But it's a core feature, core measure how the education system works in Germany, and it works, so that's the best practice. Of course, there is always room for improvements. We know that as well. There's always room for improvement. But, I mean, some recommendations from our side for the federal government would be colleges and schools in the state, they shouldn't act like a profit center. You will just right now ask what I mean with that, because if you bring your kid to a college, you have to bring money with you, right? So when I did my professional way, I paid €0 for my professional way in Europe, and I'm still here, right? So it works. So there's a core fundamental difference between a school system in the States and school system in Germany. So if an American school, if the first priority is to make sure that is covered, the costs are covered to pay the teachers, for example, or the costs are covered through the tuition through the college, I'm struggling to believe that the fundamental goal of those colleges is education. It works like a business unit, right? And we have to face it, right? We have to really face it, because if a dean looks for that customers as a student, of course they have different KPIs to get measured, how many graduates they get a job outside and different fundings. But there is a core fundamental difference and I guess improvement where we have to steer back that educational institutes should still provide education on a high priority first.
That will spur a lot of dialogue with the audience. And could we, because I want to make sure they have time to dialogue with you, could we take that as your recommendation? And
I have more.
I bet you have more. And I'll get them all from you eventually.
Right.
One from each of you, and then we want to turn it over to the audience.
Okay. Does government understand the needs of industry and what is their role? I believe marketing is a real opportunity, just rebranding apprenticeships so that the interest increases.
Excellent.
Incentives, national standards are great, but most importantly, I think, is to support the local initiatives in the communities and to allow them flexibility to do their own thing in the beginning. Because if we have a one-size-fits-all in all the communities and the government tries to fix these apprenticeship programs, before they're even off the ground, then I think that's a problem. So I think that's always a temptation, and we should avoid that temptation.
Excellent, thank you. Arjonetta?
He took my answer.
Okay, we'll take it. Thank you. Well, we have, Tom, what, 6 or 7 minutes so you can get 20 questions in. Go ahead.
Hi, thank you. I don't know if you can hear me or not.
Just speak loudly.
Okay. I'm Chris Applegate, Commonwealth United. I'm the president of that company. I have worked on and been with skills initiative efforts for quite some period of time, working with members of parliament in Germany, unions, chamber, Siemens, VW, other companies, Ministry of Education, and the embassy here. The thing that the audience should recognize, this didn't just happen. It was originally legislated. Lots of things get legislated, but they don't work. This does work. It has worked, and it will continue to work. But being in Germany and meeting all the different pieces of government, education, industry, unions, chambers, representative for industry and trade, one thing comes across very clearly. There's consensus among all parties. The consensus is a foreign word to us here, but the consensus is what gives it the strength and the synergy to work and continue to work, and the structure that's built underneath it is something that we should adopt. I tried with other members on a national basis to try to do this on a limited basis with our energy industry. And the weak link in the chain that we found, and I asked Mr. Spiegel to comment on this, is the secondary education linkage. Trying to develop what needs to be done to engender and cause those skills to start at age 15 and 16, irrespective of maturity, and try to build it. And it was just a stone wall. And I'm wondering what, you've met with governors, and some governors have embraced it. Have you given any thought to working with the embassy on how to approach Department of Commerce, Labor, on how we can do this on a global basis in this country? We have the structure, we have the mechanism, we have the way to train people and give free tuition in secondary schools, but it's not being done. Have you tried online training? What should we do?
Yeah, it's a big question. I mean, we're struggling, as you all know. There's a struggle in the country right now even to get to some kind of common set of standards for K through 12 education. So I won't go there, because I know that's a controversial topic. But I think what is important is to start thinking about changing the K through 12 education in terms of directing more of it toward skills that we're talking, some of which we're talking about here today. That there are dozens of these skills that need to be thought about. And as I said, the U.S. is dead last right now in that. And we're still basically teaching the same subjects we taught for the last 50, 60 years in this country. And the world has changed dramatically in terms of technology and science and other things. So I would like to see more of the programs, the ones you talked about. We're starting through our foundation to look at putting more of these technical programs, STEM-type programs, they're often called, into a lot of the schools and things around our plants around the country. I think the idea of getting superintendents, and I've spoken to superintendents of several communities around the country, getting them to come in and visit the plant, to see this kind of skills required, to see the kind of career people have, to see the kind of compensation they kind of receive, and the quality of life, et cetera. It's going to require a big change. A lot of these, even at the local level, everyone thinks the local level has a lot of autonomy, but the reality is you find out that they don't. They're pretty constrained by teaching what they've got to teach. They're strapped for dollars. This country spends more money than any country in the world per capita and I struggle to find out where it all goes. Because when you want to make some simple changes like putting in some of these programs, it's pretty difficult. So I don't have an answer. We're trying to work it. Community by community around our plans. And the second thing I'll just mention we're doing that we've been pushing with the President's Council, also the Secretary of Commerce and the Secretary of Labor are heavily involved, is we're writing a playbook around the apprenticeship model. I'm going to spend some time with some of you, have our team get together, but we're working with several other companies to develop a playbook, kind of an easy how-to, not trying to standardize it, as you said, but trying to say, here's kind of step-by-step how you can set up one of these apprentice programs that also describes for the schools, the high schools and the community colleges and the education system and even the states how to attract funding and things if you need funding, et cetera. So we're trying to put together some kind of playbook to make it easier for businesses, big or small, and communities to understand how they can get this thing going. So, but I think it's going to be grassroots. I don't think, I don't see the top-down solution yet. So.
Could I add, though, just put in the back of your mind, we spend about $800 billion a year on public education in this country, about $1 billion on what's called the Perkins Act, career and technical education. You do the math. Perkins is up for reauthorization. I happen to think we failed in the reauthorization of WIA to improve the lot of this kind of training. But Perkins is important for both community colleges and for high schools. And we all ought to be up on the Hill, painful as that is, talking about education for a skilled manufacturing workforce.
I agree. Industry needs to
Thank you.
focus on career and technical education.
Let's do it. Only one more. Who stands up fastest? We had a fast in the back of the room. Stand up.
Just two things. Terry Royer from Winergy, a Siemens company. I really want to emphasize a point made about starting with high school, and I really applaud what I'm hearing about what's happening in South Carolina. But then I want to emphasize also a point that Eric made when he said there's no ceiling. And let me give you a quick testimony. 34 years ago, I was sitting in a high school classroom in a trades class underneath a teacher named Kevin Woods. And I was learning a skill called drafting at that time, a time when we still used paper and pencils. But I have to tell you, when I left high school, I had that glimmer of a foundation that then I was able to go to a technical trade school and learn and develop that skill. So to Eric's comment, there's no ceiling. Today I run a company for Siemens, one of the largest companies in the world. So it started 34 years ago with that technical skill that I learned.
It's a story we want to tell all young people. Join me in thanking a wonderful panel.
Great story.
Many thanks to our panelists, and we're going to go right into our next session. So I invite Stephanie Jelichka, Walter Meisel, Steve Rotman, Josh Benton, and Elfie Klump